To set context, Vishesh has recently, more or less exited his stake in Shiprocket, and Shiprocket itself is a fantastic story. And before we, of course, come to that, and the big IPO, which is just around the corner. Post, all of this, you actually get into what was Shopify of, India at the time, and you start creating CartRocket. What was that like back in the day?
So CartRocket came from a very simple idea. So I sold one business and then I was just a consultant. Again, simple trading business. Mm-hmm. E-commerce came in new after mobile apps. Everyone wanted to have an e-commerce website.
Right.
And I just acted as a consultant helping people build e-commerce websites for them.
Right.
In the process, I realized India had so many bottlenecks. One, it is expensive. So if you want an e-commerce website, it used to cost lakhs, and lakhs in 2010-11 is a lot of money today.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one part. It used to take months to develop a website. Then it was full of bugs. Then to get a payment gateway, it was a process. There was maybe one company offering payment gateway, and the process was almost as high as maybe visa process, whatever. Most complicated.
CC Avenue or something?
I think CC Avenue, there's one more company. I forgot the name. There was one more company. CC Avenue was there.
Right.
Build Desk, I think, was there.
Could be. Yeah.
And one more. So where we partnered.
Right.
So payment gateways was a problem.
Yeah.
Logistics, let's not even go there. That was the last biggest problem available.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of problem statements. So I met my current co-founders as a customer. So they were an agency for me, and I was getting my websites made from them.
Right.
Same way as mobile apps.
Right.
There's a developer, there's a customer, I'm just the middleman.
Yeah.
And that's how I met my current co-founders, Sahil and Gautam.
Right.
A fun journey. They were building websites for me, and all of Sahil came from US. So he had some idea. He came with that vision. US has Shopify. India doesn't have Shopify yet. Why don't we build that? He had the macro blueprint laid out.
Right.
But that's about it.
So Sahil was the numbers guy, Gautam was the tech guy, and you were the sales guy.
Sahil was mostly tech and numbers together. Okay. So he loves his Excels.
Right.
Gautam was mostly ops. I was mostly sales.
Awesome.
So the roles were quite well spread.
Defined that way. Yeah.
You will sell, I will build, you will manage. That's how we kind of collaborated. And first time I joined them, they hired me as a sales guy. They said, you sell for us only. Right. Now you're good at sales.
Right.
And you're literally independent.
Sure.
And we are building. So they actually gave me a job, and 1 month in, they realized, let's just do it together.
Nice. Where did your passion for sales come from? Because that is something naturally people aren't, so adept to. And every time, even now, I go into college and I'm talking, because I also teach sales, to a lot of organizations. And I go into colleges and I ask, how many of you here want to look at getting into sales? And recently I was at girls' college, 130 people, in the audience. I said, how many of you want to get into sales or do something with sales? Not one hand went up. I'm like, okay, basically. But of course, then I did the session. I told them about how everything is in sale. Everything is a sale, right? Yeah. Even when you like that boy and you want that boy to go out with you and you convince him. I said, that's a sale. I said, today's Friday night. I said, if your deadline is 11 o'clock, but you want to stay out till 12 and you convince your parents, even that's a sale. I said, you want to eat Indian, your friend wants to eat Chinese, okay, and you're eating Indian. And I said, you get to eat that Indian. I said, even that's a sale. So then when I said, okay, how many of you think sales is going to play a role in your life? 1 hour later, okay, 80% of the room had their hands up. But it's something that most people are very scared of.
So, like you said, sales is not an independent area. Everyone has to be good at sales, whether you are doing a job or running a business. That's the core thing. Fundraising is again sales.
Oh, 100%.
Everything, like you said, everything, the core of it is sales. Even if you are a product manager, convincing your CTO of a certain thing is sales.
So true.
So that's the core of everything. Yeah. And I think there's no skill to be learned here. I think sales will always come from a confidence and to some certain degree overconfidence. You have to be so confident in the way you project, pitch, or anything.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even have the whole information. But because the other party has zero information.
Right.
So you still have half.
Yeah.
You still have an edge above them.
Yeah. And I think it's about your conviction, right? If you are convinced, then you will be convincing.
Yeah.
So I think that skill plays a big role.
That skill, I think, is always, even in the company today, all my employees, we force everyone to sell. Even product managers are selling. So that is one thing that you have to continuously learn and adapt to.
I'm sure you love this particular clip. If you want to watch the full episode, click on the link below and watch the whole episode.